Hello, this is Debbie from cariadcards.co, and today I'm going to show you how I made this card. Now I know I've got a thanks stamp. That's because I do tend to send out quite a lot of cards to thank anybody who buys anything from me, but you could either leave that blank or you could put any sentiment that you want there. You have to excuse my hands. I've been stamping with Night of Navy on here, and I'm afraid I've been a bit mucky and I've got it all over my hands. I've given them a good scrub, but I haven't quite got it all out yet. Right, so let's get started. So to make this card, I tend to use 6x6 inch card blanks that I just buy online, so that gives me my base. I then have pre-cut this. I will put all the sizes on my blog for you. So I've only got one layer of card as the main matting and layering here, and I cut that to 14 centimetres by 14 centimetres. I then have embossed two lines down either side. I often emboss a square, but I thought I'd just go a bit different today and just emboss it vertically. So to do that, I used my Simply scored board, and you can either emboss it so that your lines are facing upwards or de-emboss it so they're facing inwards. I'm going to do this one where my lines are facing upwards, so embossed. So that's the good side of my card. I'm going to turn it over, make sure that it's snug up there. Use the embossing stylus that comes with your Simply scored board. There's the edge of my card, so I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch into the next groove and just put my stylus in the groove and pull it down to the end. And then because I've got two lines, I'm going to go again 1/8 of an inch in and do the same thing. Now I could go straight here, but I just find it a little bit awkward to try and hold the card and work in that corner because I'm right-handed. So I'm just turning the card around and doing the same thing here. 1/8 of an inch in and 1/8 of an inch in. Right, the next thing, I can put that away now. The next thing I'm going to do is stamp my card. I tend to like to do that fairly early on because with the best will in the world, you can make a mistake in your placement and not get it just where you want it, and I don't want to get too far into making the card and make an error and then have to start completely from scratch. At this point it's quite easy to put it right. I always use a foam pad when I'm stamping and just a bit of scrap paper to save my pad, stop it getting too dirty. Usually I tend to stand up when I'm stamping. I find that gives me a much better image, but for now I'm sitting down. I'm using one of my favourite sets, Another Thank You. If you've got to send out thank you cards, this is just a fabulous set. There are so many different styles, and that's the one that I'm using today. So I've already got that pre-mounted. It's a photopolymer stamp, and when you use them they do tend to stain. You can see this is stained with the inks. That does not come off when you use a different ink colour. Don't worry about the staining, it doesn't affect its performance in any way. I'm using Night of Navy because I just felt that worked quite well with the colours that I've used here, Island Indigo, Pool Party and Calypso Coral, and I just felt that black wouldn't work very well. Smoky Slate might be a bit too pale, so I thought that one for me was perfect. So Night of Navy, ink my stamp up, and then in the bottom right hand corner press it on and you've got a lovely stamped image. Okay, I'll put that aside just for a second to dry, and I can move that away for a moment. Now, looking at this card, what I've got are two squares of cut card mounted on top of each other, and then an image from the Petite Petals. So what I used was these. They're just from a set of square nested die cutters, and the ones that I took for the larger image, measuring from the inside edges, because that's where the cutting blade is, that is 4 centimetres, and the smaller one is 3 centimetres from the inner edges. And again, looking at the card, I need 3 of the 4 centimetre squares and 3 of the 3 centimetre squares. Just to save some time and save you having to watch me get my big shot out, I've pre-cut these. So there we go. So all I want to do now is to mount those onto those. Now I should be using dimensionals. I think I said to you the other day I'm still waiting for my order from Stamping Up to arrive when I should have my next set of dimensionals. I do tend to use an awful lot, I don't know about you, but I just love the sort of 3D dimension that you get on cards. They just add a bit of interest. So I put 4 of these, but to be honest, if you're using a dimensional, you're only going to need 1 in the centre because they are so good. So I am rushing a bit. I will do my best to get this centrally, but if you're doing this at home yourself, you can take your time and make sure that everything is perfectly centralised. Right, I am trying desperately to grow my nails. I've always had a job growing them. I think because I'm not very good at wearing rubber gloves when I do the washing up. But it does really help if you've got some nails when you're taking off the backing off the foam pads. I find I'm always struggling to get them off. Right, so there we go. Let's get the last one on there. Okay. Right, now what I've already done is I've mounted this card, well actually this card, onto a piece of card just to save you having to watch me sticking lots of dimensionals on the back, taking off all the foam pads, which is probably going to send you to sleep. So I've just gone one stage ahead and just mounted that on. That's all I've done. The next stage is to put these 3 squares onto here. Now you do want to get these as accurately placed as possible, so I don't put anything onto them until I'm sure I know exactly where they want to go. And I tend to put the top one and the bottom one on first, use that as a guide for my eye, make sure they're about evenly spaced there, put the third one in, and then just have a look. If I feel there's not enough gap between them, I'll move that up slightly, just until you think that they're evenly spaced. And then after having them perfectly matched, you've got to take them off to put your dimensionals on. For one that side I would probably put 2 on, but I do tend to be a bit of a scary Mary with dimensionals and always put more on than I probably need. Okay, right. Then put your middle one on. And as I said before, you can take your time doing this. I'm trying not to be too slow because I'm sure you've got other things you want to get on and be doing rather than watch me trying to get them 100% perfect. I'll obviously do it as well as I can in the short space of time that I've got. Nearly there. This is, you know, a fairly quick card to make, especially with something that looks pretty unique, I think. Okay, and there's my last one. Okay, well that's not bad for rushing, is it? So that's where we're at the moment, and you can see the last thing we've got to do is stamp our flowers and then punch them out and get them on the card. So to make the flowers, I used my wonderful go-to set. I'm always using Petite Petals. That's the one that I've chosen to use today. That's the stamp that I'm going to use. Now, as you know, I'm changing colours between them. So the colours I've used are Pool Party, Calypso Coral and Island Indigo. And I'm using the same stamp, so I'm going to have to clean my stamp between each of these, otherwise I'm going to muddy the colours. So to do that, I've got my wonderful stamping scrub. These are available in the catalogue. And you open it up, you'll see there's a little raindrop symbol there, and that side has a little sun. What that means is you take your stamping mist and you just put put a couple of sprays onto there, and then when you stamp, you rub it onto there to wash it, and then you dry it on there. So I'll put that out the way at the moment. I'll get my foam pad and my paper. I'm going to start with the lightest colour first, I think, and I'm going to use my pool party. Make sure I've got plenty of ink. Get a good stamp. If I'm not happy, I can always restamp that. Just take it over to here, just rub it on the wet side, rub it on the dry side, and then you're ready to go with your next colour. How cool is that? Right, shall we do the Island Indigo next, just because I'm working with blues? I'm not sure. I think that's probably a darker colour than the Calypso Coral. I do tend to go from light to dark. Okay, stamp that. Look at that lovely, clean, crisp image. Again, when you've used this a lot, you can just run it under the tap, give it a tiny little bit of washing up liquid, give it a clean, just dry it, pop it back in, reuse it. Brilliant piece of kit. And finally, Calypso Coral. Put that into there, get good inking on it, stamp it, there we go. Okay, sorry, I do just like to close my ink pads. And finally, give that a clean, quick rub, all done. Right, next thing we need to do, we've got our 3 flowers stamped. So take the Petite Petals punch and lining that up. To be honest, I should have brought some scissors out and I haven't, just so I've got a bit of room to move my punch. Now, you didn't see me do that, did you? I should have really had some scissors. It just gives me a bit more room to move my punch around. So you want to line that up so you've got an even amount of white around the outside for your edging, and just punch it. Do the same with your next one. Normally I just tend to use a pair of scissors so that I can get my punch in a bit closer. That's why it's not lining up as well as it should. Let's how disorganised am I? There. I should really just commit and punch. I'm terrible for wanting to try and get it as accurate as possible, though I'm sure many of us card makers are like that. Oh, look at me, I should just do it, shouldn't I? There. Okay, so 3 petals punched out, and then what I do, I've got my Stampin' Up paper piercing mat and my Stampin' Up paper piercer tool, which is wonderful for doing this job because I like to give the flowers a bit of dimension. You can see they're not flat there, they're raised. They just tend to look so much nicer when you give them a bit of 3D. So you've got your end of your tool there, pop your flower down and just literally press into it, and look how gorgeous that looks. It just makes such a difference. And again, do that with all of them. In fact, I probably use this tool and mat far more for getting some dimension onto my flowers than I ever do with paper piercing. Right, next we're going to put some pearls on. Now you could just put your white pearls, they'd look perfectly fine, but what I've done is I've coloured them. Now I've used the Stampin' Up markers in the matching colours, Island Indigo, Calypso Coral and Pool Party. To be honest, these have worked fine, you can see they've coloured, but I do think the blendabilities would be better, simply because they're alcohol markers and the alcohol would evaporate much faster, so the colours would dry faster and you've got less risk of the colours sort of pooling together. I don't have a full set of blendabilities yet, so I've stuck with my markers, and all I've done, just to show you quickly, is I've taken the brush end and just literally coloured them. You do need to give them plenty of time to dry, which is why I've pre-done them. Also, I find that the darker ones tend to colour better than the lighter ones. You can go over and give a second coat. So all I'm going to do, I don't know how you get your pearls off. I tend to use my trusty scalpel. I find that works for me. Just lift them off and then put them in the centre. I think we've all got our own ways of attaching gems and pearls, haven't we? And this one I find just works for me. I do love to colour the gems. I've really got into colouring rhinestones at the moment. And the beauty of it is, it means you only need one colour. You don't have to buy blues and pinks and yellows and greens and reds, and then of course you've never got the right size in the right colour. Whereas this way, just buy the clear rhinestones and the white pearls and colour them so that they match your project. And you've always got them to hand. Right, now the last thing I need to do is attach these onto here. You can put them in any colour order you want. I just decided that I wanted the darker colour at the bottom, and it made sense to put the other blue at the top with the Calypso Coral in the middle. Now you can attach these with a dimensional, but just for speed and because I've got some of this ready, I'm just going to use some silicone ink glue. Well, I like silicone ink. I'm just going to pop a blob on there. Make sure it's in the middle. The other thing I quite like about this is it just gives you a bit of leeway so that you can move it about if you don't get it exactly where you want it first time. Much as I adore dimensionals, of course once they're stuck, they're stuck. So that just gives you a bit of extra movability factor. And there, oh, I've got silicone ink all over my hands as well as silicone glue all over my hands, as well as Night of Navy ink. What a mucky pup am I. There we are. Quite a simple, straightforward card, but one that's got a real designer wow factor, I think. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have a go at making this, I'd love to see what you come up with. Thank you very much from Debbie at cariadcards.co.